I'm sure the metrics are really going to like this outcome as far as the Gamecocks are concerned. So hopefully this will be good for us because I think we were outplayed overall in a lot of different ways. And it's okay to not play well. That's going to happen from time to time. But as I thought as competitors, I thought they dominated us. And then what's the button to push to change that? New faces? Yeah, we played a bunch of guys here and there. I don't know what that. It's hard when that's the button that you have to push to incite a response. Sometimes to find that button, and it wasn't there for us today. So I give them a lot of credit. I knew going into the game that they were a scrappy bunch. This is what DNA means, and hopefully our guys will listen to this. You have DNA of your program. He's been there a long time. He's a good coach. Their DNA is not that they're the birds of Trey, as they call themselves. Their DNA is how hard they play. They competed every loose ball. They were there first. Anytime we dribbled, they had two hands on it. That's DNA. I mean, and so while I didn't know some of these new faces they had and exactly how they would play, I did know that. And that part of what they do had me worried, honestly, if I'm being real honest, which I always do, last night had me worried about what today would really look like because of who they are that way. And that's the reality of it. And they held true to that as they really competed and out-rebounded us and did all the things that really don't have to do with whether you had a good day at the office or a bad day at the office, which we had multiple guys that did not have a great day at the office today.
You mentioned North Florida's reputation, like the birds of Trey thing. They shoot a ton of threes. How would you say the struggles with the perimeter defense went, particularly in that second half?
I thought in general we didn't do a great job. At the end of the first half, I thought they got a couple of threes because of a miscommunication on our part defensively. But they also drove the ball and got in the paint, and then they would pivot and they would make strong moves, and we let them get into the paint. And, you know, we normally don't foul a whole lot, but at some point, if you're going to provide resistance, at some point you're going to say, okay, you don't get to go any closer to the basket. Sometimes that ends up being a foul. And we didn't provide enough resistance in those situations. And we let good players. They have good players. They're not great physically. That's why probably somebody thought we were supposed to win by whatever it was, because they're not great physically. You're going to look at them and get off the bus, and it's going to be, but you have to play the game. And when you get out there, they were attacking hard, and then they were able to get some stuff done around the basket.
Lamont, free throws turned out to be a big part of this game as you guys missed a bunch. Is that something that's an easy fix moving forward, or how do you go about correcting that moving forward?
Well, do you want me to be real, silly? How do you correct free throw shooting? I guess you practice free throw shooting. Some guys shoot better free throws than others. Naturally, they probably have their whole life. Other guys can always improve by practicing. This is also a one-game sample size. I don't even look, but probably someone had a really bad percentage tonight, and that's not what they're going to shoot all season. So today was the day that they did that, and maybe they're not a great shooter, but they're not going to shoot like they did today all the time. We do a lot of stuff at practice. I always tell them, when your name gets called at the free throw line, whenever that is, you got to stand up. They call your name, the referee gives you the ball, stand up, make them. And we didn't do that, and it seemed to be contagious. That's where, that's where in lies the problem, is that there's no connection between my ability or propensity to make a free throw and yours. And so I may look at you and say, he's struggling today. I'm going to pick him up. I'm going to inspire him. I'm going to say something real encouraging to him. But when I get up there, I'm going to make mine, that's for sure. And then I'll continue to help him. And then your number ends up being a better number, right? In a game like this, those all matter. We just had some lack of discipline plays also. Defensively, fouled three-point shooter, which I don't think it's a secret. My guys know that it's my dream to go a whole season without fouling a three-point shooter. And we made it to game number 1.
Coach, you talked about North Florida being the competitors or out-competing you guys a little bit when it came to those loose balls and things like that. So how do you kind of go and correct that effort? How do you coach effort and that competitive edge to your players this week?
Well, that's hard. I mean, it's hard to coach effort. I'm not a big fan of coaching effort. Some of it probably everyone knows everything. I played in the Stone Ages, so there wasn't a lot of access to information. So you just naturally respected everybody, had a healthy respect for anybody you played. You always felt like you were better than them, but you didn't know. There were no highlights of them. You couldn't go on YouTube and see any of those guys play. So you just respected them when you played. So today, guys know who is who. They know that they got a guy that transferred from NAIA. So you think any of these guys think they're a worse player than that guy? So I think that's part of it too. And our whole thing has been, we approach the game the same way no matter who we play. And so because if the same people that are going to overlook someone, and I say overlook, but just be overconfident against an opponent that they just think they should beat, are also secretly, no matter what they say and no matter how they act and all the bravado that might be there, are also the same people that are doubting themselves against somebody that people think are supposed to beat them. They just are. They just are. And so that needs to be corrected. Those are individual decisions, that they have to make, is to respect the game, respect every opponent, respect them all. But at the same time, you're not going to fear anybody. There's nobody that you should feel like you're not going to beat. But maybe that was part of it. Was that we tried to hype them up as best we could, but maybe that was part of it.
Coach, Jacoby kind of mentioned lackadaisical play in his time. With slow starts kind of against Worcester and against North Florida, how would you kind of go addressing that for the remainder of the week as heading into SC State as well through the rest of the season?
Addressing slow starts. I mean, I don't know. We have to play better. We have to play better. We have to pass and catch better, cleanly. You do a scouting report. This is kind of how it works. We don't just go out to the court on game day and willy-nilly play whoever happens to show up that day. So they tell us who's going to be here. We watch film on them. We do a scouting report, all that stuff. And I look at some of the things that we talked about that we did not do. And there were a lot of those things. And so I think it's that. I think it's attention to detail. Again, maybe some guys thought, I don't really have to. One thing we talked about, I'd be interested out of their 15 offensive rebounds. I'll check and see how many of them were long offensive rebound. I'd say outside maybe 3 feet of the charge arc. I consider that a long rebound. And we spent time practicing, not just turning and running in there and getting the rebound, because when you shoot a lot of threes, there's a lot of long rebounds. I'd be interested out of those 15 how many were long rebounds. So there just were a lot of details that way. So I think it's just addressing that stuff. We've talked about it a lot. I think guys just have to decide that they're gonna do those things. You know, we got off to a slow start. I think it was like energy and all that was just not great. Even when we'd make a run, it wasn't like, I know the vibe when guys know, okay, here we are. We got that out of our system. Let's play now. And honestly, I just don't think I felt that they felt that throughout the game.
It's the first game. The whole season's ahead
True.
of us, so I'm not going to act like the sky's falling. But
True.
this is a
It's
game.
not.
You mentioned it though. It's the metrics are going to be impacted by this, and we're going to hear about this in March, in February. It's going to be one that's going to be brought up over and over. How do you keep it from being an albatross for your team or an anchor around its neck? Do you use it as motivation? You pull it off the shelf when you need it, or you just try to file it away as far back as possible?
I mean, it's history. We could have also won the game by 2, or I mean, I don't know. Were we 13-1 to start the season? Someone can fact check me that last year, and the metrics still didn't like us. And our one loss was on the road at Clemson in a game that we led, I think, probably 30-some minutes of the game. So that's not what we're here for. I said that in a tongue-in-cheek fashion because they're going to do their thing either way, right? Like, we got to play. We have to get better. We're focused on improvement. And I think if somehow Jacoby Wright would have banked that last 3 in and gotten fouled on it and made the free throw and we won by 1, I think we would have said, we're good. Hey, what's going on tomorrow? Like, I think this helps force you to have to look at it for what it is and why the game ended up in a situation that it was. So, you know, we could have won. We're constantly driven by and focused on improvement. I said that in year 1, and growth. I said that in year 1, which, by the way, I think we had some of the most growth in one single year that I've ever been around, to be honest with you. And hopefully we'll continue to grow with this group as well.
To one of the earlier questions, y'all played 4 halves of basketball, 2 of them didn't count. But there have been some slow starts, but when Jacoby and Cam have come in, it seems like, at least on the offensive end, plays ticked up a little bit. It's looked a little bit more fluid on offense. Maybe do you tinker around with roles and starting? I know minutes count more than starts, but it just doesn't feel like the starts have been great.
Yeah, I mean, there are exactly 2 of those that even exist, and only one of them that counts. So certainly we'll troubleshoot all the time. I'm not some people do. Maybe here's my starting lineup. That's going to be my starting lineup for the rest. But you know, we'll watch the tape again, and guys will have to earn what they're doing out there, whether those are just regular run-of-the-mill minutes during the meat and potatoes of the game, or whether that's the privilege to start the game, or whether that's the most prized possession of all is to be in there at the end of the game. They'll have to really show and demonstrate that that's where they should be. And so every day we're going to look at that. We tinkered around with it last year when Colin started off not starting and then came back in, and we had made a couple lineup changes last year. So certainly we'll continue to look at that and then try to find the perfect mix of who it is. But we had some older guys that have shown that they can do certain things, and some of them didn't do those things today. But we'll just continue to move forward and evaluate.
Last question to Trey.
2-part question here. I guess
Okay.
first, for a team that has the high expectations for themselves like you guys do you feel like this type of loss is someone that you needed? Like you mentioned, starting off,
What needed, is that what you said?
like that you would have needed, because you talked about had he banked in the shot and got fouled and won, you would have looked over it. But there were a lot of things that you guys could have looked at it. Do you feel like you needed this? And the second part of this question is, when you go and look at the film and it's a bunch of things that you say you guys could have done better. Where do you start? Because it's just so many things we've talked about today that you guys could have done better. Where do you start?
Okay, the first part, I don't know that we needed this, but we definitely earned it. We earned exactly what we got today, right? Honestly, this is exactly based on what we did and all the things, how the game probably should have gone. You know, there's a call here or there that could go this way or that way that could change, and they bank in a shot, right? Like, there's some things, but it's like, I don't know, sometimes the Cosmos, they kind of figure out that this needs to go this way. But I think we got what we earned just based on how we ultimately played. And go ahead with your second part. I'm sorry, I'm not great at the two-part questions.
Just basically tomorrow when you look at film, where do you start? Like,
Oh, okay, yeah. No, you know, I think we'll go back to fundamentals, things that we've said 100 times, things that I'm saying. Here's who I am in games. I don't have a lot of frustration in games because normally guys do what they've practiced and what they've normally done. That doesn't mean they play really well. I really don't get that frustrated with poor play on game day. I just don't. It's going to happen. I try to push a button and get a new face in there, and maybe that guy will play better. But I do get frustrated with with having to repeat myself over and over and over. Like, these things that I'm saying, you need evidence that they are true, right? Sometimes. And there was a lot of evidence out there, so that's where we'll start. All the things that we talked about, fouling a three-point shooter. I don't want to keep going back to that, but you would not believe how much we talk about not shooting a fouling a three-point shooter. And we foul a three-point shooter. I'd like to have those points back, right? Pump faking. You know, you're jumping at the same time as another guy, and then you're going to levitate, hang in the air, and then make the shot. Well, we did it twice. We also found the other side of it probably 6 to 8 times. We could easily have flipped those around by doing things that we've practiced and things that we have talked about on a consistent basis. And so I think that's where it starts, is where are we in terms of our commitment to and obedience to things that the staff over the years has identified as winning plays for this program. I think that's where it starts. I think there needs to be and the guys that will do that will play the most, regardless of their talent. They're just going to play the most because I know we can win games with that. I'm not sure about winning games when we're, going to rely on blocking a three-pointer, then you don't block it and you foul a guy. That's unreliable to me. I'm not sure how to win with that. I know how to win with the others. And honestly, that was a huge strength of last year's team, was they really locked into to those small details that allowed us to be much better than the cellar dwellers that everybody thought that group was going to be. Kudos to those guys. And the challenge will be is if I can help these guys acknowledge those things, because they're fully capable of doing them, if I can help them acknowledge the value of those things and how they relate to winning. And that'll be a real challenge for me, and I have to do a better job of that, honestly. I have to do a better job of that.
Appreciate it, Coach. Thanks, guys.
Sure.